Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Cindy Chavez here. Today is Wednesday, April the 11th, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, your first daily dose of happy for the day. And we're in April, we're on Wednesday. It reminds me of A.A. Milne writing about Winnie the Pooh and how Wednesday was actually Wednesday in the middle of the spring. So today is Wednesday. How about that?
Oh, I love that. Winnie the Pooh brings a big smile to my face anytime I hear about him.
Yeah. That's one of those happy stories from childhood that kind of carries on into life, and it's a good thing.
I mean, somebody used Winnie the Pooh, I think, to write like a version of the Tao, right?
Oh, really? I didn't know about that.
And it's like a bestseller for years and years. And I think, yeah, I know what that is. That's just we don't want to let go of Winnie the Pooh. So we
Well, that's a good motivation. I like that one.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's a very good motivation. I could live with that one. I had this is day 53 of my mirror work, and I had a breakthrough today.
I want to hear about it
Because I know obviously. Excuse me. When I first started doing it, the impetus was that you had told me that Jack Canfield had done it to get rid of that negative voice that pops up in the back of the head in very annoying and unexpected ways. And
Right.
I found that it did work. And after around day 30 or so, it gave up the ghost, so to speak, and went away. Came back and then went away again. And for the most part, it has stayed away, and that's good. But like I had mentioned previously, I wanted to keep going with it just to see what else will happen. And yesterday I had an event happen that was pretty unpleasant, and I was trying to work to put it behind me and to let go and release, whatever angst I had associated with it. And I was having some trouble with it, but I was making some small progress. And I was talking with the other co-hosts about it and so forth, and so I was making some progress. I got to the mirror work this morning, and normally, I think I've told you, normally it's like 30, 45 seconds, something like that I do it. And today I found myself talking to myself for like a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. I think I went like 3 or 4 minutes on it. And it was helping. It was feeling good. And I said, okay, well, this mirror work is obviously helping me to overcome and to release stuff. So now I have a new tool for releasing stuff. Good. I like that. And I said, okay, this is a good breakthrough. Well, I finished it up, and then I also had made the intention for myself that I was going to really focus on segment intending, and I've been doing that more and more the last few days. So my next segment was to set up the computer and check my emails and such, and then get ready to do this show. And I said, you know what? I wonder what would happen. It just kind of came to me as a flash. I wonder what would happen if I combined segment intending with mirror work. In other words, to use the mirror when I'm doing my segment intentions.
Wow.
Said, well, that's an interesting idea. That one, I mean, as soon as I heard that idea in my head, well, the first reaction I had was, that sounds great. My second reaction was, that's got to be a message from inside. Not so much from my conscious mind. That's got to be a message from inside. And third, why not try it right now? So I did. And what an interesting feeling that was, to do segment intention into the mirror, knowing that I was trying to intend what I wanted to happen for the show and, for what I was going to do next. And knowing that I was saying it to myself in my own eyes. It was a completely different experience from segment intending without a mirror. Now,
that is like a flash of inspiration for sure.
It is. Oh, yeah. It was huge. And I don't know what's going to come out of it, but it's got to be good. That's all I can figure. I think I've stumbled onto something. I just want to keep going to find out what it produces.
Well, this is like now the second or third time that you've had a real taken some inspired action where the actual mirror work is considered.
Yeah.
Right? Like thought of an idea while you were doing it that applied to it, that changed it into like a different type of exercise. I think that's awesome.
I can't remember. There probably is something that I've done or something I've heard about, but I can't remember combining processes together before. Have you ever tried combining any processes together? Things to do to get yourself into a better frame of mind and to release stuff and all that kind of stuff.
I know that I have. I just can't pull up exactly which ones, but I think it sort of happens naturally once you start using the different processes, and then you find the ones you really like. It's kind of like food.
Okay.
You taste something, you're like, oh, this would be good with, with that other thing I
see
like.
what you mean. Yeah, that's true. That's right. That's the way we put meals together, isn't it? We combine different dishes together. So you're right. There is that part of it. I was just thinking more in terms of like, some exercise. And we do these various exercises to help us climb from the negative range into the positive range and then try to stay there, knowing that when we do that, law of attraction is going to keep bringing more and more of the good stuff that we want that's been in our vortex all this time. So,
well, I think like using the prayer beads with the affirmation.
That's true.
I mean, that's
yeah.
Most of the time we would use prayer beads for meditation and maybe have a mantra that we said with each one. But this was like using a positive affirmation with each one. So that's a little bit of combining, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. That would be a fair example. But this combining thing is interesting. I mean, I don't know where it's going to go. I just have this sense of impending excitement, like it's going to go somewhere. It's going to be fun.
Definitely. Absolutely. So I have a question.
Okay.
You said that yesterday you had a rough spot, and that you also said that for the last couple of days you've been focusing on remembering to do segment intending. Had you done segment intending for the segment that had the rough spot?
That's a good question. Did I do a segment? I'm having trouble remembering.
Just out of curiosity.
Because what has happened a lot of the time is I have remembered to do it more and more, but there's been other times I just simply forgot. And trying to remember remember that I forgot is hard to remember, if you know what I mean. So I guess my initial impression is I probably didn't, because I don't remember doing it.
It's easy to forget.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to forget that particular exercise because we're used to just going from one thing to another. And this kind of puts a little spot of deliberate, thought in between each thing. And it breaks the day up into segments. My thought, though, was that when we have a bad segment in our day, when we go through something rough, that segment intending, even if we hadn't intended for that particular segment of time, segment intending may even help with the releasing, because we're like sort of putting that rough spot behind us and beginning a new segment that doesn't include it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that's what I found when I was combining the two, the segment intending with the mirror work. Because I was feeling that in a big way. I mean, segment intending has always been, always. I haven't done tons of it. But to the extent that I've done it, it's been a little bit of work to get myself to do it, and a little bit of work to actually do it. I have to kind of push myself a little bit. Combining it with the mirror work has made that work a lot easier. That's what I noticed this morning. It was easier to do it. It just kind of flowed rather than having to push myself to do it. So maybe combining the mirror work with the segment intending will help me do it more consistently, more often.
I think it's a great idea. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And I love that you actually really recognized in the middle of your mirror work today that you were sensing a shift and an ability to release something that was still bothering you. That's really awesome.
Tell me about it. Yeah. Because when I have definitely graduated to the point where I really understand how important it is to release stuff. Even if I don't understand what it is that I'm releasing, I can still feel it, right? I can still feel the negativity of whatever it is. And I want it out. I want it out fast. So, yeah. So discovering it while doing the mirror work that it actually sped it up. Oh, that was exciting. That felt really good. Like, oh, good. Maybe I can get rid of these things. Wouldn't it be great if I could always release them quickly? That's what I'm thinking. Wouldn't it be great if I can always release stuff that shows up quickly so that I don't have to live in it? Because that's the worst part, is living in it. You don't want to live in it, but so often we do. How great if I can find a way to just dump it, just get rid of it. Say, goodbye, I'm done.
It reminds me of that story. Have you heard the story of the two monks, the two Japanese monks that are walking, and they come upon a little brook that they have to cross. It's very muddy, and being monks, they're not allowed to physically touch a woman. And there's a beautiful woman standing there with a beautiful kimono on, and she's trying to figure out how she's going to get across this little muddy brook area without getting her kimono all wet. So the master, and it's a master and a student, the master picks up the woman and carries her across.
Mm-hmm.
And the student is just what in the world is going on? Like, we are not supposed to touch women.
Right.
And so he puts her down and they continue on their journey for, the rest of the half a day on their journey. And the student is just beside himself, very upset. And he's just livid that his master has, broken this rule, and touched this woman. And, and he's just turning it over and over in his mind, getting more and more upset about it. And finally, he just can't not speak about it. And he says, "What happened back there?" And the master says, "Well, I picked up the woman to help her across, but I put her back down before we crossed."
Very nice. Yes.
And you've been carrying her this whole time.
That's right.
And I think of that story. I'm always like, yeah, you're right. I mean, if we could just learn that one skill of being able to release the things that are hanging on to us and, bothering us, that would be a game changer.
It is a game changer. No doubt about it. Yeah. So I just feel like I'm on the brink of something really good for my life.
I know you are.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So how are things going with you? Anything fun or exciting going on?
Well, I have to say something. I got an email yesterday, and I can't really divulge too much because of client confidentiality, but, talk about a win. I think this is so interesting. One of the things I specialize in is communication and conflict resolution, and really teaching people how to have a difficult conversation, because none of us like to have difficult conversations. And I always say, look, I'm an expert at having a difficult conversation, and I don't like it either, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
But there are certain things we can learn that will make it easier. And, nobody likes those 4 words, like, we need to talk, right? Yep. Nobody likes to hear that. But I was coaching someone who was needing to have a difficult conversation, and it was in a work-related, situation, and they needed to ask for something. And it was actually really, really big. And so what we did was focus on how the outcome and how we would feel, just like what we're doing in this book that we're moving through, just like what we do in everything we talk about with law of attraction, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that Neville Goddard, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. It's like, well, let's not talk about all this struggle and how hard the conversation is going to be. We're going to learn some skills and we're going to figure out what we want to say, but then we're going to walk in with the sense that the outcome's already happened, and we're going to feel happy and enthusiastic and, and awesome about it.
Mm.
And that was like a month ago, and I hadn't heard back from this person. And yesterday I got an email that said that they basically walked into the office, and the person that they were going to have the conversation with just started the conversation and offered them the very thing that they were going in there to ask for.
No kidding. Oh, wow. Wow, that's a great win. Oh,
and so I'm sharing in the win since, I got to be part of the process.
Yeah.
But, isn't that amazing?
It's fantastic. I mean,
yeah.
Talk about pure law of attraction, deliberate creation. That's exactly what happened there. It was pure creation, and it worked out exactly the way that he or she wanted it to work out. That's amazing.
So, one of the best things in my life really is checking my email and getting hearing wins from clients.
Sure.
It's like they're not my wins, but I feel like they are sometimes. So
yeah. Well, no, you do deserve some of the credit because you helped them get there. Yeah, sure, they were the ones who actually did the work. They did the stuff. They attracted the win, but you played a role in helping them get there. So yeah, you do deserve to share some of the win.
Yeah, so it's pretty awesome.
It is. It's very awesome.
They walked in and said just one thing, and then they just got offered without even having to ask for that specific thing. So
wow.
Yes. I mean, we can do this.
Yeah. Well, we need those wins. We need those stories to keep us going, to make us feel like, yeah, this is all worthwhile. This actually does work, and because we know it theoretically, abstractly in our minds, we know that, of course, this all makes sense. And, on those occasions where we are in touch with our inner being, or as Wendy calls it, our infinite being, we believe. But then we get into life, and then all of a sudden the belief gets tested, and now it becomes more difficult. So we need the wins to sustain us, to keep us going, to feel good, and to learn to trust that, it really does work out. And like the movie said, if everything will be all right in the end, and if it's not all right, it's not yet the end. So
Not the
just
end,
keep
right?
going.
That's the thing is, I think that you said it theoretically. We know this stuff, but that's different than living it and acting it and
It is.
stepping out, into what we know and being willing to, that's the thing. Hold that vision, the vision of what we have, the vision of what we want, and step into the feeling of the wish fulfilled and hold the vision of it and be able to see it when our physical eyes and ears and everything around us and everyone around us is showing us something different. That's when it gets tough.
It
and
does.
That's when people start saying, well, this is just the way it is. And as soon as we hear that phrase out of our own mouth or someone else, well, no, but that's just the way it is. We know that we're coming up against a conclusion. And what you said, it's not the end yet, right? But so no conclusions. Don't make conclusions. It's not over yet. We're coming up against some kind of limiting belief because that's just the way it is, we think. And it doesn't have to be that way. Reality is flexible.
It reminds me, there was a song by that name, Bruce Hornsby, way back in like the 80s, called That's Just the Way It Is. And the chorus was, that's just the way it is. Some things will never change. That's just the way it is. But don't you believe it?
Perfect. I was like, oh, one. I don't know this song. So you were saying it. I was like, I don't like the way this is going.
And that's what the whole song is about. It's about all these different things that we believe can never change, but they can.
Yeah. And, I remind myself of this sometimes. And that is just that, especially when times are hard, when there's something that's a hard thing we're going through, is that things can change so fast.
They do.
And they do. They very often do.
Yeah.
And so we need to remember that, when things feel like they're going to be a certain way forever, it's like, oh no, you never know. Things can change so fast. And if we get our vibration aligned, it's that much faster.
That's the thing I keep trying to remind myself, because the biggest changes always happen when I'm aligned. And of course, being aligned is when you're feeling great, when you're feeling really great. When you're fully in alignment, stuff just moves. And I think that's what was happening with the mirror work. The mirror work had helped me move quickly into alignment, and I was feeling the shift. I was feeling the melting away of that resistance I'd been carrying for the last 24 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I was in that, I had actually, in the course of 3.5 minutes, reached the high-flying place from a relatively low place. I was not feeling really good when I woke up. They talk about how when you wake up, that's your best chance to reach for something good. And I tried to reach for it while I was still in bed, and it wasn't coming. It wasn't happening. So I got up, dressed, did the usual stuff, and then came into my office where the mirror is and started to do the mirror work. And I could just feel the improvement. And that's when stuff started to happen. When I got into that higher place, that's when I started feeling the shift. That's when the idea came about doing the segment intending combined with the mirror work. That's when all this stuff started coming into my head. It's like, whoa, this is quick.
Well, I think we talked about it yesterday. Sometimes I talk to so many people in a day. I'm like, was this Walt and I talking about on the podcast? But talking about how heavy that energy is.
Oh, yeah.
That resistance and that catabolic energy when we're feeling sad or depressed or angry or whatever, it's very, very heavy. And just a small residual amount of it can really pull us down. And so it sounds to me like you had that residual amount this morning and it was really making it tough. And the mirror work just lightened it right up. It's amazing.
Not what I expected, especially since when I think about how I started doing mirror work in the first place. 5 seconds the first day because I couldn't stand to look in my own eyes.
Right. Now you've got minutes.
Not only am I gotten minutes, now I'm actually really interested in doing it. I'm not pushing now. Now it's like I can't wait because I had this great experience with it. I've had 2 or 3 great experiences actually, and I'm beginning to get the association that mirror work makes me feel better. Well, that's a powerful association to have.
Yeah, we like things that make us feel better.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So speaking of feel better, we are working on the book, Money and the Law of Attraction. We are in part 2. What page are we on in the book?
In the paperback, we are at the top of page 72.
72. Okay. And this is the subsection entitled, What is My Financial Abundance Story?
Yes.
All right, so let's do a little reading here and see what Abraham has to tell us about how to get the green stuff. So Abraham says, a belief in lack is the reason that more people are not allowing themselves the financial abundance they desire. When you believe that there is a finite pile of abundance and that there is not enough to go around, and so you feel injustice when someone has more than others, believing that because they have it, others are deprived of having it. In that case, you are holding yourself apart from abundance. It is not another's achievement of success that is responsible for your lack of achievement, but rather it is your negative comparison and your attention to the lack of your own desire. When you feel the negative emotion that you feel as you accuse others of injustice or of squandering wealth or hoarding, or when you simply believe that there is not enough to go around, you hold yourself in the position of denying your own improved condition. And then in italics it says, what anyone else has or does not have has nothing to do with you. The only thing that affects your experience is the way you utilize the non-physical energy with your thought. Your abundance or lack of it in your experience has nothing to do with what anybody else is doing or having. It has only to do with your perspective. It has only to do with your offering of thought. If you want your fortunes to shift, you have to begin telling a different story.
Ooh, I love this because I'm all about the stories that we tell.
Yes.
They create our life.
They do. They do. It's interesting, too. We so often think that the stories are the result of our life, but it's actually the other way around. The stories really do create the life.
They do. They do. And I got excited when I saw this subheading of what is my financial abundance story. I think a lot of people don't have a financial abundance story. They just have a financial story.
Yes.
Abundance isn't part of that story.
Isn't that interesting?
And I've heard people, that were knowledgeable or they were familiar with law of attraction. They wanted to, create their own reality and they wanted more money. And so they're trying to be very positive all the time and tell stories. And it might be even a story that I told at one time in my life is the story of, we know times get hard sometimes, but we always make it. And the money always comes. Sometimes it comes at the last minute, but it always comes. And, that can sound positive, but really we're creating a story where we barely have enough.
Oh, yeah.
It comes at the last minute and times are tough pretty often.
Exactly. That's exactly what happens too.
It reminds me of that story I've told before, but about a person that said to me, I'm a survivor. And in a 15-minute conversation, she probably said it 10 times.
Oh boy, yeah.
She was very proud of it. And she had been through some really horrendous things. So I wanted her to be able to be proud that she had survived those things.
Right.
But it hit me that if she couldn't let go of that identity, that the universe was just going to keep handing her more things to survive, because that was her story. Her story is, look, I'm a survivor.
Yeah,
what do survivors do? They survive. So I don't want my financial story to be, well, you know what? I know how to get through tough times. Times are tough and we always make it. We're blessed. We always have just enough. I don't want that to be my story, even though we can make it sound positive. It's actually really not.
No, it's not. It's not. And
it could be better. Just put it that way.
Yeah.
It might be better than some other story, but it actually could improve. So
it reminds me of the story that you just told about the monks. He couldn't let go of the woman that he hadn't actually physically touched, but he couldn't let go of her. Well, the survivor, yes, surviving is, that you survived a tough thing and you came out of it is good. How about thriving? How about How about putting down surviving and moving on to thriving?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's where the financial story becomes a financial abundance story.
Yes. You're right. Yes, that's exactly where it happens. So, continuing with the reading, it says, many people criticize those who are living well, who accumulate land and money and things, and that criticism is symptomatic of their own lackful habit of thought. They want to feel better, and often believe that if they can make that which they are unable to achieve, quote, wrong, unquote, then they will feel better. But they never do feel better. Isn't that interesting? Because their attention to lack perpetuates lack everywhere they look. They would not feel uncomfortable in seeing someone else's achievement if that desire for achievement were not present within themselves as well. And that criticism that they often keep alive within themselves only serves to hold them in vibrational discord with what they want.
And that word discord, I mean, when we are in vibrational discord, we're out of alignment.
Yep.
And it doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good. It feels uncomfortable. That's the word that they used. It feels uncomfortable. And yet we choose to stay there so often. Well, what if we chose not to stay there anymore? What if we chose to decide that I want to move beyond that? That's exactly, I mean, you mentioned somebody who constantly tells the story of how we always get enough money to get by. And that was me for many years. That was both of us, Louise and I. And exactly what you might expect is what happened. We got by. And getting by after a while gets really old.
Well, and that's probably a good thing.
It is.
I mean, I think that's what happens with most of us in most situations, that we're finally willing to change. It's like that question I asked before is, have you suffered enough? Because if you haven't suffered enough, then you're probably not ready. At some point, you're like, okay, this is getting old. I am tired of this and I'm ready to change.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. And I knew it even when we were doing it. I mean, I remember this would come out of conversations that the two of us would have together, Louise and I, as we're trying to figure out, how do we resolve these financial issues? And she'd say, well, you're always fretting about this stuff. We just got to realize that, we always get by. We always find a way to survive. The money keeps coming in. And I knew that was a better feeling place than where I was coming from at that time. But I also knew that wasn't anywhere near where I wanted to be.
Right.
And so part of me would resist that and say, but I don't want to just get by. I want something better than that. And she'd say, well, of course you do. But, for the moment, we have to recognize that we're going to be okay. We're getting by. And so we'd have that conversation a lot. And over time, neither one of us wanted to stay there, obviously. But nevertheless, it shows how even the conversations we have when we're trying to climb out, we put these limits on ourselves and we don't even recognize them so often. We see them as better, and they are better. They are improvements. But it's like we decide to stop on that step on the stairs instead of climbing the rest of the stairs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And, something else that's in this paragraph that I want to talk about before we go any further is the idea that it says they want to feel better. It's talking about criticizing other people who are living well.
Right.
Who accumulate land and money and things. And that criticism is symptomatic of their own lackful habit of thought. They want to feel better and often believe that if they can make that which they are unable to achieve wrong, then they will feel better. And it's, I've even heard stories of people talking about growing up. I remember a person talking about a story where they would ride to I think it was their grandfather would give them a ride to school in the morning, and they would drive through they would have to drive through a really, posh neighborhood with really big houses. And the grandfather would say, oh, who would want to live in a house that big? And, and it's like, okay, he's trying to probably make himself feel better that he doesn't live in a house that big, or make the child feel better that they live in a tiny house. I don't know, but nobody would want to live in a house that big. It's too much to clean, and it's too much. Who wants to work a yard that big? And no, so criticizing things that other people have. And I've actually heard people occasionally that do have a lot of things and a lot of money kind of make excuses, or I can tell that they're not real comfortable with it. Like when they're around people, they will make excuses for, it's like, we really did need to have this or that. We really did need more room, and we needed a bigger house because of whatever. It's like, I don't care if you think you needed a bigger house. I'm happy that you have the big house,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But you can see that there's this little dance that people do verbally when they're trying to, and I think that's really interesting that it says, and it's true. But they don't feel better.
No, and I think I know why. It not only is it not a terribly high flying thought in Abrahamic terminology, but there is a difference. And I was realizing this as you were saying what you said. There is a big difference between saying no, thank you, and criticizing.
Mm-hmm.
The critic is the person who has to keep harping on the fact that, well, who'd want to live in a place like that? Too much to clean. I don't want to do the yard work. Blah 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 blah. Just blah, 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 blah.
Well, or like, oh, what a waste of money. Like,
waste of money.
Things like that. When it's like, okay, if you don't want a house that big, then that's fine.
Yeah.
But you're right.
It's snipping at it. It's like I got to keep snipping and snipping and snipping and snipping and snipping and snipping, rather than saying no, thank you.
Well, and if you put yourself in that place where you make money bad, or you make having money bad, then you'll hold yourself away from it forever, because none of us want to be bad.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yep. Yeah, that's actually one of those really bad traps that we set for ourselves, or that we set for each other, even, which is just as bad. Anything that says to ourselves, I must not like the fact that people have money that I don't have. That's always counterproductive. And it's one of those things where many of us wish that, I mean, let's put it this way. If let's say we look at somebody, we say they have too much money and they aren't sharing and they're hoarding and they're doing all these terrible things. Okay. What do you want to have happen next?
Right.
And inevitably, there is no answer other than to repeat, well, I don't want them to have all that money. They're wasting it and they're hoarding it and they're doing all these terrible things. Yeah, okay, but what do you want to have happen next? Well, I don't want them to keep hoarding. Yeah, that's what you don't want. What do you want to have happen next?
It's the same pivot. It's the same thing.
It is.
We're always so stuck on what we don't want.
If they would actually answer that question, they'd probably climb out of it. You know, if they actually if they answer the question, no matter what the answer is, no matter how ludicrous the answer was, if nothing else would make them laugh. Yeah.
That's true. I actually do that sometimes in brainstorming sessions. It's like, let's just brainstorm. And it doesn't matter if the things we come up with are just completely ridiculous.
Right. Yeah.
We just keep going.
Yeah. Once you start saying what you want differently, then you actually change the subject. It seems like it's the same subject. You're still talking about the money, but the way you're looking at it is what's changing, and that's the real subject. How are you looking at it? How am I looking at the money today? Am I looking at it in a way that's productive for me or non-productive? How am I looking at it when I'm in conversation with my wife or with Cindie on the podcast or with any of my friends? How am I looking at it? Well, the real question is, what's next? What's the next step? So anyway, moving on. Let's see, which paragraph we finished? We just did this one. So, in other words, if someone called you on the telephone and said to you, hello, you don't know me, but I'm calling to tell you that I will never call you again.
Okay.
Well, good. Yeah, that's good news. I'm glad to hear that. Well, if you got that call, you would not feel negative emotion about the caller's absence from your life because his or her presence was not something that you desired to begin with.
Right.
But if someone you care about were to make that announcement to you, you would feel strong negative emotion because your desire and your belief would then be at odds. When you feel negative emotion about anything, it always means that you have a desire that has been born from your personal life experience that you are right now opposing with other thoughts. Boy, is that a hard concept.
Mm-hmm.
In italics, it says, vibrational discord is always the reason for negative emotion. And negative emotion is always guidance to help you redirect your thoughts to find vibrational alignment with who you really are and with your current desires. Yeah, that says it. That's why I'm combining the mirror work with segment intending. Because of that, right there, what they just said. Because I don't want to
Vibrational
stay there.
discord is always the reason for negative emotion.
And it's a message. We don't think of it that way,
Yeah.
but it's a message.
Well, I think that's why, and I sound like a broken record sometimes, but I think that's why it's so important to acknowledge the negative emotion we're having.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the things that that you do really well that is a model for me, even though I teach it, is that sometimes I don't talk about it, but sometimes people just ignore their own negative emotion. Right? They don't say, yeah, I had a rough time yesterday and I was, feeling, anxious or depressed or whatever. And I had a hard time shaking it off, or they don't even talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that though, but when they're having the rough time, they swallow it down. They pretend that they're not having a rough time. And we see that a lot in law of attraction circles.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, I got to stay positive. And that's not the point. The point is to acknowledge that you're out of alignment and then get into alignment.
Right.
Not to pretend you're in alignment, because you can't fake out. You can't fake out the universe, right? You can't fake out yourself if you're feeling a certain thing. You can't just pretend that feeling. It's like they talked about earlier in this book. We're not encouraging you to pretend that you're happy with a situation when you're not.
That's right. That's right.
We're saying to say, I don't like this situation, and this is what I would like better, and then start focusing on that.
Yes.
That's the whole key here. And the vibrational discord is still going to be there, even if we ignore it and push it down. And actually, it turns into other things, right? Anger that's not acknowledged starts turning into depression.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So it's important to be able to identify how we're feeling.
It's very important. In fact, as you were describing that, I was realizing one of the other conflicting messages that comes up in conversations about the law of attraction, because one of the phrases that often gets used is fake it until you make it. Mm-hmm. And it's a perfectly legitimate concept. But as you were describing what you said, I realized in a new, clear way why there is so much confusion about that concept. Because I believe what most people believe is if you fake it till you make it, you will be convincing the universe that you really do feel that way. And that's not what the purpose of fake it till you make it is. The purpose of fake it till you make it is to convince yourself to get to feel that way so you can actually trust to feel that way. It's not about convincing the universe of anything at all. It's about convincing yourself. And I often think
about fake it till we make it as an identity thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like stepping into the identity of whatever it is that the person that has whatever that is. That part we can fake.
Yes.
Like I remember telling a client one time, or actually just one of my friends who I asked her, what do you want? And she said, I want to be a fully funded retiree that's enjoying my life. And I said, okay, well, how does a fully funded retiree that's enjoying life throw the towels into the dryer? In other words, those mundane tasks that we do every day.
Right.
How does a well-funded retiree that really enjoys her life, how does she eat breakfast? How does she walk down the hallway? Like if we'll ask ourselves those questions, our body actually will start to change a little bit. We stand up a little straighter. We start embodying like that person that is that thing we want to be. Well, that's the fake it till you make it.
Especially if we answer the questions. It's not enough to ask them. We actually have to answer them. We have to say, yes, well, this is how I would feel. This is what I would do. This is how I would live.
And so in doing that, we can fake that.
Yes.
Or it's like my affirmations that I started 1,000 a day. I feel rich.
Yes.
I didn't feel rich every single time I said it when I started, but I certainly wasn't feeling angry and deciding to ignore it. See, there's a difference.
Yeah, there's a huge difference.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because that is a saying that gets talked about a lot. Fake it till you make it. And it can be a really useful tool if we use it right.
Yes, but you're right. We have to use it right. If we're not using it right, we're actually using it against ourselves. So it's like any tool. You got to use it properly. If you don't use it properly, then don't expect a good result. If you try to use a screwdriver to break into a window, you're not going to get a good result there. I mean, yeah, you may get the window open, but then what do? You got a broken window.
Well, it's kind of funny. I mean, we talked earlier about we know this stuff in a theoretical way.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't use the tools at all. We just know them all.
Isn't that the case? Yeah. Well, I like the way Mike Dooley describes that whenever he's trying to make a point, something similar to this. He says, you're sitting in your car and you've been visualizing all day and your vision boards are in the back seat and the copy of the secrets in the right-hand seat and you're ready to go and nothing happens because you don't put the car in gear.
Yeah, you got to take the action.
That's right. Yeah, it has to be the inspired action, too. Not just taking action without... This is something Wendy and I have been talking about a lot, and Tom, too. Tom and I have been talking about this a lot. Taking the inspired action, getting yourself into that positive vibrational space, that really good feeling space, and then taking the action because you're inspired to do so, as opposed to just taking action because I'm an action-oriented person. Because I know from personal experience that second approach leads very often to disaster. And I have had too many of those. No, thank you. I'm done with those. But when you start with the vibration, when you start with being in the happy place, then the action is ideal. That's where it's fun. That's where the good stuff happens.
We've talked a lot about why do you want to be rich? Because I don't want to be poor.
Yes, right.
Well, this is the way I explain the difference between inspiration and motivation is that, because some people say they need I need some motivation. Right? Mm-hmm. I'm not feeling motivated. Okay. That's okay. But what's better is to feel inspired. And motivation often comes because it's a result of what we don't want. Like I'm at the gym every day. I'm really motivated because I don't want to be fat or I don't want to be unhealthy. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's like this big monster that's behind us, chasing us. And that's what's moving us forward is we're motivated because this thing's behind us that we don't want. I don't want that. I'm eating healthy because, I don't want cancer, right? Or whatever people say. It's like, I don't want that. Mm-hmm. I'm working really hard. I'm motivated to work long hours because I don't want to be poor. But inspiration is that thing that's out in front of you. And I'm working hard because I want this thing out there and I'm going to achieve that. Or I'm at the gym every day because I feel so good when I go to the gym or whatever it is. It's inspired action, and inspired action pulls you along.
It does. Yeah. You don't actually have to build the energy. It builds it for you.
Right. Yes. And so to me, there's nothing wrong with motivation, but I'd rather take inspired action than motivated action.
Yeah, well, and I've had some success with motivated action. One of my favorite things when I'm trying to get to know somebody is to understand what their motivations are because it tells me a lot about them. But I totally agree that inspired action is so much better because motivated action has very often led me down the wrong path. I have yet to have inspired action lead me down the wrong path. It never has that I can recall anyway.
And inspired action, at least in my experience, is often punctuated with synchronicities that feel really good when they happen. I've been a visual artist most of my life, but I don't work in that field, not right now. And I don't have an art studio right now. And so coaching and writing are my main things that I do right now, but I've been really feeling a pull to make art. And so I ordered a few art supplies and because that feels really good to me and I want to do it. Well, talk about yesterday. This is so crazy. When I was 16, I loved to work with pen and ink and pointillism, where you draw pictures with just composed of nothing but tiny, tiny dots.
Oh, okay.
And a pen and ink. And I drew a Pegasus.
Ooh.
And it was really good. And I mean, I thought it was really good at the time. And I was a big into really high quality, like papers and things. And my dad said, well, we could put that Pegasus, we could reduce the size of it and put it on a nice stationery. And so I thought that was the best thing that ever happened. Sure. I was just a kid. And so my dad took my Pegasus that I made and he shrunk it down and, the world of magic, right?
Right. Yeah.
And put it on these stationaries. Well, that was in 1979.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave some of that paper away to some of my friends.
Oh.
Well, over the weekend, I ordered some art supplies. And one of the things that I kept feeling so inspiring and kept sensing to myself is I kept thinking, this has been part of me since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what I was born to make art. And it's not that I was born to only make art, but it is one of the things I came into the world with a talent for. And I really am happy when I'm doing it. And so I'm glad I made this order of these art supplies because this is going to be awesome. Yesterday, I go out to check the mail, and there's an envelope in the mail from a friend of mine that I haven't talked to in decades, that I went to high school with. And it's my birthday's coming up. So it was an early birthday card, and I open it up. I open the card, and in the card, there's a piece of paper. It's a letter. It's folded up, and I open it, and it's the Pegasus stationery.
Wow, nice.
And it said, surprise. Can you believe I've held on to this all these years?
Oh, yeah.
And I couldn't help but think that this all came about because I was in alignment with a desire to make art.
Yeah.
Like, I let myself go with it. I said, I'm just going to make the time to do it because it makes me happy. And I know that it's a thing that's, my inner being is really joyful when I'm doing it. And then that letter came. Isn't that something?
It is something. It's fantastic.
on a 39-year-old piece of paper.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what's so cool about it because, she kept it all this time and sent it at exactly the right moment to follow immediately after you had the thought that you want to get back into art again. I mean,
yeah, and I don't have
timing.
the original. I don't have any of it. So,
which made it even more special.
It arrived to me. That's the only one I have, but it was like, wow.
That's really something. Yeah. We have these things happen, and I mean, synchronicities for me, for the longest time, even after I was exploring LOA, I had so much resistance to it. I was like, yeah, okay, they're just coincidences. You see them often enough, and eventually you begin to say to yourself, there's more going on here than just coincidence. The law of averages really doesn't allow this many wins in a row. It just doesn't do that. Well, and
it's like the I am rich, or I feel rich, I feel rich, I feel rich. And all of a sudden, money really just started sort of showing up in the weirdest ways. And I could say that was coincidence.
Sure.
But I don't believe in coincidence.
I now believe that a coincidence is just another word for a synchronicity. They're both the same thing. There's really not a difference between them. The people who say that there is a difference are the people who are trying to pretend that there are no synchronicities.
Well, and synchronicity, now here's the thing, and I may differ with some people as much as I love them, and my life feels like something's not quite right if I'm not experiencing them, at least every week, if not every day. But I've heard people say, I love when I have a synchronicity because I know I'm on the right track. And I don't agree with that all the time. I just think it means you're aligned with whatever it is. You're just in sync with that thing. It's not a stamp of yes or no. Sometimes it feels like it, and we can kind of use it that way if we're questioning and we're trying to get aligned. It shows us alignment, but that's the main thing it shows us. It just shows us where we're aligned, what we're synced up to, whatever energy is happening that we're synced up to. And I was synced up to me being an artist, and I got a little proof there.
I'm curious. I don't quite get the distinction that you have in your mind, because I suspect that the person who says, I feel like I'm on the right track, this is a clue of it, is saying they feel aligned. But you don't see it that way. What do you see I'm on the right track as meaning as a different thing?
Well, I guess I always shy away from making things right or wrong. They are what they are in the moment. And part of it is my work as a relationship coach, because I've seen people that were in relationships that might have been good at one time and have turned into where they're absolutely not good. And they'll say, but all these synchronicities happened when we first got together.
Oh, I see what you mean. So
they're hanging on to a sign that they had, a synchronicity that they're interpreting as a sign that they're supposed to be together.
Yeah, an indelible sign, never changes. Yeah.
And reality changes, it's flexible. And so I guess that's why I bring that up, is because I don't put too much stock in a synchronicity for like, I have to, okay, I guess this means I need to quit coaching. I'm going to quit the podcast. I'm not going to write anymore. I'm supposed to be a full-time artist.
Right. That's it. You're done. Life's
right.
over.
I mean, that's the thing I'm saying is that I enjoy synchronicities and I love them and I want them in my life. There's an idea that in Vedantic philosophy that there are only two signs of being enlightened. One of them is that you stop worrying. And the other one is that you experience more meaningful coincidence, which is synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I want to be there in that place, but I don't need to hold so tightly to a synchronicity as if it is proof of everything that is to come in my future and that I have to let go of everything else. And I see that sometimes with people who have had some kind of powerful dream or powerful synchronicity. And I love all those things. Mm-hmm. I want them in my life. And yet I've learned to hold them, to enjoy them and hold them a little loosely. It's like I love to eat a slice of cake, but I don't need to eat a whole cake every day because I like a slice of cake. So
that's right. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I agree. I think you're absolutely right. I would even add that when we hold on to an old sign like that, saying, well, this is supposed to be, it was meant to be, what we're really saying is reality shouldn't change. Reality should stay fixed. In other words, we shouldn't have the power. We shouldn't have the ability to change anything. They don't realize they're saying that, but that's what it adds up to.
Mm-hmm.
They're adding up to the idea that because I had one good thing work out well and I got a good sign on it, I never want that to change, and so all change now has to stop. Well,
yep, exactly.
That just doesn't work. I don't care how you slice that. And
it can always get better. Things can always get better.
It can get better.
Nature desires expansion.
Yeah.
So when we hold ourselves in a place of back there, no, I'm really sure this is how it was supposed to be because I had this, sign. Then we're not moving forward anymore. And you know what? If that's the case, we can keep moving forward because there will be more synchronicities.
Yeah. Yeah. How about that? How about not having to cling desperately to an old synchronicity, but rather to be ready to accept the new ones, the fun ones that are yet to come.
Yes.
That's a big difference, but it's an important one. It's one that I think we all need. I think it's probably at the root of resistances. Anything that thing that I was holding on to, and I wasn't really sure exactly what it was. I mean, I knew what event I associated it with, but even this morning, I was asking myself, what am I holding on to? What is this thing? I don't understand, first of all, how I'm holding on to it. Second of all, why I'm holding on to it. Third, why am I even having to focus on this?
I actually had that same conversation with myself about something yesterday that I got frustrated over. And I said, okay, what is it that I really want? I'm telling the story in my head. I'm going around and around about this thing that happened and that I don't think it shook out in the right way. And I'm not happy and, blah, 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 blah. And I said, all right, Cindie, it's like, what is it that you want? And I was like, I don't know. I guess I'm just ready to let go of it.
Well, this morning when I woke up and I couldn't get that high feeling place, that's what they say. This is your best opportunity to get there. And I couldn't get there. And after I felt the frustration of not being able to get there, I said, I just want to feel better. You know what happened the very next second? My cat jumped up on the bed, come over to get petted.
Aw.
I mean, talk about perfect timing. Yeah. She heard my request and, okay, I'm here. Come on, let's play.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you were still in the low flying place, the cat was like, yeah, I'm not going up there yet.
I'll wait for him to settle down a little bit.
It was so funny. I remember my son was reading a book that was written by the guy, I can't think of his name. They call him the Dog Whisperer.
Yes, Cesar Millan.
Yes. He was laying on the couch. This is when he was a teenager. And we had a little dog that was laying on the floor, but next to the couch where he was. So just very quiet. He's reading a book. The little dog is laying down there. And he read a line that said that your animals always are monitoring your energy. And he said he didn't move. He just moved his eyes. He just looked out the side of his eye, side eye over at the dog. And the dog looked over at him.
Yep.
And it cracked me up. But the truth is that our pets are sensitive to our energy.
They really are. Yeah. Yeah. In much more of a way than we are. and many of us are learning to become more sensitive, but animals, I mean, you can just see the way. I've been studying how my cats, for instance, know what's going on around them, and when they're looking for dangers, particularly if they're outside and so forth, or even when they're thinking about going outside, they look out the door. Is it safe to go out? I can tell that they're doing two things. First, they're listening for sounds because you can follow their ears as a sound happens, and you can see the ear pointing in that direction. And secondly, and I've never found a good way to explain it until now. I think you just gave it to me. They're sensing the energy. They're tasting it. Sometimes they put it with a cat or a dog. They'll sniff for it. But I think what they're really doing is they're looking for the energy. They're trying to get a sense of what the energy is in the neighborhood before they venture out, making sure they're not walking into an ambush or something.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. But it's
and
also
I think
cool.
that Abraham talks about animals, right?
Yeah, they do make reference to animals sometimes.
And how, they don't have the resistance that we have.
No.
They don't have all those stories,
I think what Abraham says is that animals are in a much better receiving mode than humans are.
Right.
Whereas humans are better at the wishful, deliberate creation mode, the mode that says, here's what my wish is. Animals, for whatever reason, don't seem to be able to do that as well. So they're trying to learn more how to express their wish, but they're great at doing the receiving. And somehow we need to find a way to combine the two, right? Take the strength of the human and the strength of the animal.
One of the things that I know for sure is that small, consistent action is the thing that moves us forward and brings us to the things that we want. And so it doesn't have to be hard. We can let it be easy. It doesn't have to be difficult to start changing the way we behave so that we are aligned. Start changing the way we think, changing the way we respond so that we stay in alignment more often.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is just paying attention to how we feel.
Yeah.
And making sure we bring ourselves into alignment first. That's the big key. So it can be in small ways. And it's mostly like we just talked about, asking ourselves, okay, what do I want? Because boy, I tell you, I can go around in a tangle for a while before I ask myself that question.
I know.
When something's going in a way I don't want. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, just get grounded here, take a breath and figure out what would be better. What do I want? And focus on that. It never ceases to amaze me when I ask a client who is talking about what they don't want. Well, let's talk about what you do want, though, and what that would look like. And no fair saying that what you do want is to not have that problem.
That's right, yes.
Right? It's like, okay, if you didn't have that problem, that thing, what would it be like if you had what you did want? And the energy shoots through the roof as soon as they start talking about what they do want.
Yeah.
You can hear it. If I'm in person with them, I can see it. Suddenly they're glowing. And they're talking about, well, I would be able to do this and that. And they're naming all these things. And the energy just gets like high flying thought energy, right? And it's amazing. And so, we can do that. And it's like a meditation. We have to keep bringing ourselves back to that. Even if we have to do it 100 times a day.
Yeah. That's really true.
Start going off track. We just say, okay, wait a minute. And that's the segment intending that's so awesome.
Yep. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Well, we're down to like the last minute here. And it's always a little bit sad for me on Wednesday because it means I won't get to talk to you again until next Tuesday.
Aw.
But the good news is I get to talk to you again next Tuesday.
Yes. And we're making our way through this book.
We are. We're moving right along.
I'm excited.
Before we leave everybody, for somebody who wants to reach out to you, how do they reach out to you for some private consultation?
They can reach out to me, cindiechavez.com, CINDIECHAVEZ. Find me online, shoot me an email, come say hello on Twitter, Facebook, wherever.
Sounds good.
I'd love to hear from you.
All right. Cindie, I always love our sessions together. This is great, and I can't wait to do it again next week.
I know, me too. I hope you have a great rest of the week, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. We'll see you all next time. Whichever show, all the shows. We always want to see you next time.
All the shows.
Right here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.